In February of 2016, 9 members of the Bromfield Model UN Club and 2 teachers took a 9-day trip to Greece. The first day was departure day. We met up at Logan Airport in the afternoon and boarded a 4 p.m. flight to Frankfurt. We landed in Frankfurt at 5 a.m., which was 11 p.m. Boston time, so we were all pretty tired. When we arrived, most of the shops were closed, and there was almost no one at the airport. We found some cool chairs, and a lot of us slept. I used euros for the first time to buy a bag of gummy bears. A few hours later, we boarded a flight to our first destination in Greece, Thessaloniki. Now, this might just be me, but it took me like a week to learn how to pronounce this, so I'll say it again. Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki. It's not that hard. We landed around 3 p.m. and quickly visited our hotel, where we found even more cool chairs. Then, we took a walk to the White Tower of Thessaloniki, which was constructed by the Ottomans around 1430 and is the city's most famous monument. Here's a little bit of what we saw. That night we went to a restaurant and had our first taste of real Greek food. Katie took a classy picture with wine bottles and Miss Maddie ordered an octopus tentacle. We went back to our hotel and the next day was the first day of the Model UN conference. If you're unfamiliar with Model UN, allow me to briefly explain. As the name implies, Model UN is a simulation of the actual United Nations, which is a worldwide organization whose primary purpose is to maintain international peace. It does this by having delegates from almost every country in the world work together to pass resolutions on various world issues. We participated in the Anatolia College Model UN, which was comprised of a bunch of different committees which all function a little differently, but their main goal is the same: to debate world issues. Each committee addressed different topics. All of us on the trip were assigned to represent the UK, and we were all assigned to different committees. Here's some footage from the conference. At the end of the conference, there was a closing ceremony and Best Delegate awards were given out. Congratulations to Deirdre and Lily for their awards. After the ceremony, we all said goodbye to the people we'd met in our committees, the seniors had a really cute group hug, and we made our way back to the hotel. The next morning, we got into our tour bus and began the drive to Delphi, which is in southern Greece. Our bus was huge, and we had it all to ourselves. On the way, we passed one of the many roadblocks that the farmers have set up all around Greece. They blocked the road by setting up a line of tractors in order to protest the insurance policy and tax reforms that the Greek government is planning to impose. Some roadblocks are only in place for certain times of the day, and others are set up indefinitely. A few hours later, we stopped at Meteora, which is a large complex of Eastern Orthodox monasteries in central Greece. The monasteries were built as a place for monks to find solitude. In order to respect the values of the monks, the girls were asked to wear skirts. We were lucky enough to be able to visit one of the monasteries. Inside, the walls were coated with paintings depicting Christian imagery and various stories from the life of Christ. The paintings were endlessly intricate, and it's amazing to imagine the time that must have gone into making them. If only we had been allowed to take pictures. Our next destination was Delphi. Our original road to get there was blocked, so we decided to take a detour through the rolling hills of the beautiful Greek countryside as the sun set. Everyone was taking pictures, but I don't think anyone's camera did it justice. After a half hour of frantic picture taking, the sun set, and we arrived in the town of Delphi. I'm sure Delphi is a very popular tourist destination, but we were there in the winter, so the only people there besides us were the town's 800 year-round residents. After stopping at our new hotel, we spent some time before bed exploring the almost empty town. The next day, we packed our bags and left Delphi to visit Delphi, which, in addition to being the name for the town, is also the name for the archaeological site. It's kind of confusing. Delphi was first settled around 1000 BCE and is the site of the Oracle of Apollo, the god of the sun. Myth has it that Zeus wanted to build Delphi at the navel of Gaia, the goddess of the land, so he sent 2 eagles to the east and west, and Delphi is the point at which they met after circling the earth. So, if you ever get tired of calling Delphi by its real name, you could always refer to it as the belly button of the earth. We got to stand in the Delphi Theater, which could accommodate about 5,000 spectators. Also, the theater was built so that if you stand in the center, you can speak at a normal level and the people in the outermost row of the theater can hear and understand you. I know this looks kind of hard to believe, but trust me, we tried it. We also hiked up to the stadium, which could hold around 6,500 spectators. Aside from the ruins, we also saw a stray cat drinking water near the theater, goats on a mountain, and endless lines of these tiny little caterpillars. They were everywhere. We made a brief stop at the Delphi Archaeological Museum and then took another bus ride to Athens. We got there in the afternoon and had a few hours to explore. In making this video, I did a Google image search of Athens and found that almost every single picture of the city is focused on the Acropolis. And while it's true that Greece is usually associated with its history, my favorite part of these few hours was getting a taste of modern Greek life. And even though it doesn't have any towering buildings, downtown Athens almost reminded me of Manhattan, because it was crowded, it was packed with culture, and because there were a lot of people selling really weird things. Is it a backpack? It's a giant backpack. It actually has like straps on the back.
Wait, that has straps?
Yeah, it's a giant backpack.
Okay.
Unlike Manhattan, there were stray dogs everywhere. It took almost all my willpower not to pet them. That night, we went back to our hotel and I shot a time lapse of yet another pretty sunset. The next day was Acropolis Day. I'll stop talking for this one and just show you what we saw. That afternoon, we were given another chunk of time to explore a different part of Athens. Bullock, the only student on the trip who had been to Athens before, showed us a small, charming park near the Acropolis. We ended up hiking to the summit of a large hill, which, after doing some research, I found is called Philopapos Hill. The summit gave us a 360-degree view of the city, and I know I've said this a lot now, but it was beautiful. While we were taking pictures and admiring the view, I don't think any of us were thinking about the fact that this was our last day in Greece. The next morning, we woke up at 4 a.m. and boarded our flight to Frankfurt, and after a quick layover, we were back in Boston, and the trip was over.
My favorite part of the conference was definitely when we had our little senior group hug, because, I don't know, it was just adorable, and it was really bittersweet. For my favorite touring moment, when we were on the bus, and we had to take the detour because of one of the tractor blocks, we ended up just in this like gorgeous countryside, and all of a sudden one of us realized, and we just looked out the window and were kind of silent for 30 minutes, and we were all just staring and like having cute conversations with each other and just being so in awe, and that was just really special.
Most memorable to the conference was the delegate dance / party. because it was so funny because we showed up in the completely wrong outfits. My favorite part of the trip overall was definitely Delphi. I completely agree. It was just so magical to be there all by ourselves, and it was really cool because it didn't have this like kind of ultra preserved feel. I felt like we were really just like walking through history.
Within my committee, one of my favorite moments was, it was right up towards the last like 15 minutes when it started to get a bit frantic because the ICJ had always been a slower process. So once we were like really trying to make those final deliberations and everyone's true opinions came out and like you saw their real side and like what they actually wanted, no one was as much friends and they were really fighting for their side. So it was interesting to see that kind of big shift after everyone had been so initially formal. My favorite moment was actually in Athens when we were given 2 or 3 hours at the end of the trip. Bullock knew about this park in Athens that we just went to that was beautiful, and we climbed up to the top of this like hilltop/mountain that had these old ruins, and you could actually see the whole expanse of the city as well as the Acropolis within that, because usually everyone sees the city from the Acropolis, but in this we got to get that as part of the panorama, and it was really cool.
At conference, I liked lunches because the food was really good and because you got to introduce, like one lunch I sat with people from our delegation, like Bromfield, and also people from my committee, and it was cool to like introduce them and have everyone in one place. My favorite part was also the same as Brian's, except for it was when we found the turtles and we followed them for like 10 minutes.
I think my favorite memory from the conference was probably when we passed like one resolution. It was a good moment because it was like, oh, we finally got something done after like a long time of not getting much done. And for touring moment, I really liked Delphi. Like when you went to Athens, like the Parthenon, there were all these like structures and scaffolds around it, and it was cool kind of going somewhere that felt like just like natural.
My favorite part of the conference was on the last day, me and like 4 people stayed back to work on our resolution. We didn't go to lunch. We got a lot done. It was very productive. And my favorite part of touring was probably, like Elsa said, when the farmers set up the roadblocks and we got to go on the detour, and it was like super pretty.
I loved so much about it, it's hard to even decide, but I had never been to a Model UN, so it was really incredible to see all of you guys in action. I was so proud of you. And then touring at Delphi, I think it really was a highlight, and riding on those windy roads with Costos, the bus driver. He was good. He was very good. And Connor, every time I'd see Connor, he'd say, I keep pinching myself. I can't believe I'm here, you know. So it was really just amazing. Great trip.
The most memorable part about the conference was right after the closing ceremonies. Everybody in our 9-person delegation was hugging their friends that they made from other countries. At that moment, it became evident to me how meaningful the experience was. When we were in Delphi, that was my absolute favorite part. You could just feel the importance and the relevance and the excitement at that one site. It was just really powerful, and I think all the students felt it as well.
My favorite part of the conference was probably meeting so many incredible people. They were all so nice. And then my favorite part of the trip was basically everything. I had never been to Europe before, so just seeing everything and seeing the culture was incredible too.
So my favorite part of conference was probably being able to write the resolution. It made me feel as though I was able to make a difference in the world, and it also widened my views about global problems that were happening. And then my favorite part of the actual trip was probably when we went to Meteora with the Greek chapels and everything. I couldn't stop smiling for the entire day.